What exactly does it take to get a 50+ inch vertical? For a long time, a 50-inch vertical was thought to be impossible to achieve. There's a really popular video on YouTube. You can literally type, is a 50-inch vertical possible? And they break down the physics on why they don't think it's possible for humans. Now, having said that, I myself have reached a 50-inch vertical. Darius Clark has. And then I believe there's been a few other athletes that have hit that mark potentially. They just never verified it, right? They never tested. Guys like Anthony Height. Anthony Height is probably the highest I've ever seen a person jump. So it's a very, very rare feat of athleticism, one of the rarest. And I'm gonna be explaining what traits I think are needed to achieve a 50-inch vertical, specifically to train up to it, both physically and mentally. And even though I'm talking about achieving a 50-inch vertical, I think the lessons you can learn from this video, you can apply it to your vertical jump training journey, whether you have a 24-inch vertical or a mid-30s inch vert, or even a vertical in the 40s. These are things that are gonna help you reach your athletic potential. That's the biggest thing I am concerned with, is how to reach your athletic potential when it comes to vertical jump. I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't care about sports or anything like that. My thing is maximizing vertical jump. And that's why I love training dunkers, because that's basically their sole goal, is to jump higher. Having said that, let's get into the video. All right, the first thing that I'm gonna talk about is obviously genetics. Genetics is gonna predetermine your athletic ceiling, basically. So you gotta think of, and then the only thing that training does is it allows you to get as close to that ceiling as possible. Now, the role of genetics varies wildly from person to person. An athlete could have genetics that predisposes them to jumping higher, but they might not be a high responder to training. I'm gonna use myself as an example for this. I had above average genetics when it comes to jumping, where I feel like I'm genetically gifted, so where I have a higher genetic predisposition than most people, is my response to a weight room stimulus. I can literally breathe the air in a weight room and I'll probably get stronger and improve, and it transfers really well to my vertical jump. Now, genetics affects literally everything, from limb length to your tendon stiffness to the percentage of your muscles that are type 2B, fast twitch muscle fibers, how your nervous system is wired, how it wires to your muscles, your injury resilience, which is a huge genetic factor that I don't think is talked about enough, because if an athlete is more resilient to injuries, they're able to jump more, so they can jump higher at the end of the day. Those are all genetic factors that is gonna help an athlete jump higher. Who do I think a 50-inch vertical is possible for? I think if you have above average jumping genetics and then you train for 10+ years, a 50-inch vertical is possible. The more genetically predisposed to jumping higher and your response to training volume is, the better that is, the higher the chances are that you're gonna hit a 50-inch vertical. But for the most part, if you have above average genetics for jumping, then you might be able to reach 50-inch vertical, and you for sure can get into the high 40s. How do you know if you have above average genetics? If an athlete is anywhere from like 5'8" to 6 foot, they haven't fully gone through puberty, and they're able to dunk on 10 feet, I consider that above average genetics for jumping. And I would actually say that's well above average. And I feel like it's for that subset of athletes that a 50+ inch vertical is possible. Now, if you're not there yet, I think mid 40s to high 40s is definitely doable if you're not at that point that I described, but you're close to it. And then an athlete with average or even slightly below average genetics for jumping, I actually think a 40-inch vertical is possible as well. Now, having said all that, you can't control your genetics, so you shouldn't worry about it. You should not spend any time thinking about your personal genetics and where you're at. At the end of the day, and this is gonna go into my second point, if you enjoy it, just do it and don't worry about the uncontrollables. That's a very popular thing in Stoicism, is ask yourself, is it under my control? And if it's not, then don't spend even a second worrying or thinking about it. However, it is really interesting to look at. Genetics is a very fascinating topic, and it's interesting to look at in terms of just other athletes, right? When you look at freak athletes, it's cool to look at their body types and their genetic predispositions and see what it was that predisposed them to be elite. at their given display of output that they chose. Now, the second thing that is very, very important if you want to achieve a 50-inch vertical is subjecting your body to a wide variety of sports and movements from a young age. Now, this is a form of periodization, and it's called long-term athletic development. You can look up LTAD for short, and you can actually look up LTAD research on Google Scholar. Just type it in, and you can read all about it. But the athletes that jump the highest, run the fastest, basically just subjected their body to a huge variety of sports and movements. I'll use myself as an example. I grew up outside, playing tag, hide and seek, all that stuff, jumping on playgrounds, jumping off of stuff. I played baseball, basketball, football. I wrestled, played volleyball a little bit, messed around with track and field. I even did parkour. I just loved to move. It's actually what this tattoo stands for right here. It stands for movement. It's an Aztec symbol that stands for movement. I just loved to move and to be an athlete. This gave me a really solid foundation to be athletic later on, pick up motor skills, be more coordinated as an athlete. I learned how to learn in terms of physical movements. And I think it's so underrated, the role of just playing a ton of sports and being a kid, the role that plays in how high you can jump later on. The third thing, and this becomes more and more important, I think, the less genetically gifted you are. But when you combine this point with being genetically gifted, the results can be insane. And that's just intelligence, and specifically a drive to learn, a natural curiosity, the desire to want to know why, being able to ask why to everything. When you undergo the exact same circumstance again, can you do something different? Can you use that information to do a different action? That's what learning is. I've always been a student of jump training, always. I always loved learning about it, and it just stemmed from the question, why? Every time I would see something on the internet about jump training, any kind of piece of information, I would ask why? Where did the information come from? And literally just following that trail, why and where did the information come from, you can learn so much. And the more you know, the better your decision making is gonna be when obstacles inevitably pop up. I also think it's the reason I was able to get a 50.5-inch vertical, because I just loved to learn. And if you combine that desire to learn and willingness to learn and willingness to apply that information with a good coach, the results are insane. So intelligence, curiosity, huge part of reaching, I think, the limit in any sport, your athletic potential. When I say reach your athletic potential, I mean it. You can come up with tons of examples of athletes that jump high or run fast that don't have the traits that I describe, but they haven't reached their potential, their genetic limit. They're not even close to it. And each of these factors that I talk about, every time you take one of those out, it decreases the likelihood of reaching that genetic potential. All right, the last 3 points are passion, discipline, and mental resilience. And the reason I bring them all up at the same time is because I think they're all interwoven with each other. I read this book called Good to Great, and it talks about companies that went from being just average companies to being excellent companies and sustaining that level of performance for 15 plus years. And something that they mentioned that was very important was 2 things: having the potential to be the best in the world at something, and number 2, being passionate about that thing. And when you combine those 2, success is basically inevitable. With the first point, having the potential to be the best in the world at something, that's where the genetics and your upbringing comes in. But the passion is what allows you to enjoy what you do and stick to it for a long enough time that you achieve insane results. And to me, passion literally just means how much do you like doing the thing. Discipline is being able to stick to something. That's how I define it. Just being able to stick to something, no matter what. Discipline is the older, more refined brother of motivation. Motivation is temporary, discipline sticks. It's a lot stickier. And the way you build discipline is really easy. You just build a habit. Habit formation is how you build discipline. So now if you combine discipline with passion, you're basically set. And the last thing is mental resilience. And the reason I put mental resilience in is because it is inevitable that you're going to run into obstacles in your jump training journey. And really anything in life, but that's why I love jump training. It's because it's like an analogy to life. If you can improve your vertical jump and deal with the obstacles, it transfers so well to other things in life. But inevitably, injuries are gonna come into play. You're gonna have periods of time where you're jumping low. And if you have the mental resilience to be able to keep going and not be affected mentally by those things, then again, success is basically guaranteed. So those are my 6 factors that I think are needed to achieve a 50.5-inch vertical. But most importantly, that's not going to be possible for 99.99% of the human population. But if you take those 6 lessons and apply it into your personal training, you can reach your own genetic limit, whatever that is. And the only way to find out what it is to train. And if you want me to train you to try to hit that genetic potential, go to THPstrength.com and use the code THP for 10% off of your first month. And let's get you started on that vertical jump training journey. Aside from that, everybody, like the video. It helps the channel tremendously. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.